Uhum. Você fica trabalhando.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Que maratones.
Hi, Professor. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, Professor. Good afternoon.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, I feel pretty okay today. So again, keep your screen off, do your thing, but just hi, Reina, Angela, Malele, Olive. Hi, you guys. Hi.
Hi, Professor. How are you?
Okay, thank you so much. How are you, Malele?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. Hey, Nadia. Reina says hi in the chat. Hey. iPhone says hello. Hi, iPhone.
Professor, before the class starts, I have a question. When
Sure.
I assigned one of the quiz, it says it's unlimited, but when I use it 2 times, it's closed and I can't open it again. Like, and the other one, I submitted. All my question is correct, but I got 9.5.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if people weren't hearing me. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear my voice?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So what lesson is that, Angela?
Yeah, let me. Okay. Let me go back on my grade. Okay. Yeah, it's lesson 9. What translation model? Chapter 1.
Yeah, I haven't even graded this one yet. I think only 9 or 10 people have done this one.
Okay. And
Okay. So again, I got to finish grading and then publish grades for a couple of the lessons today since I was done grading everybody's. But these lesson 9 and 10, like I said, only 8 or 9 students have done these. So I have not looked at these yet, but I did just change the number of attempts for that lesson. Okay.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Everybody always wants to talk about points.
I was not worried. The only thing I was like thinking why it doesn't let me to do it again, right? Because
Okay, I'm just happy to hear you say I wasn't worried. That's good. That's what I like. It stresses me out when students get worried about 1 point. I'm like,
no. It's only because I want to know the correct answer.
of course.
I read a lot, like so many times, but I couldn't find the answer. That's why I want to make sure which answer is correct answer.
I love it. I love it. No, you know, that makes sense to me. I totally understand. I totally understand.
Hello, dear Professor.
Hi, Samira.
Hi.
Good to hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, me too.
Excuse me, I have a question. How many vocabulary we have to write for each chapter?
Oh, usually, like I said, in the lessons, I ask you to choose five words and then write 5 sentences. So usually just keep it to 5 because you do that for So you'll keep doing that for the rest of the semester, just as a way to learn new vocab words. So by the end of the semester, you end up with, maybe 50 words or something like that. But for each assignment, 5 words per lesson, per vocabulary.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
And one vocabulary, potentiality, is page 22. I didn't find it in dictionary and again in the Google. I asked some American people to help me, and they say my friend is she's a English ESL English teacher, and he's surprised. I say, what? For I think at least 4 or 5 vocabulary.
Yeah.
She's surprised because she say, I never hear them.
This word potential, it comes from noun, right? The thing about English words that's very fun, I think, but also very difficult for language learners is you can have one word with a very similar meaning and you add a suffix or a prefix, or you add a few little letters and you change the part of speech, right? So a potential, you could say something like, she has a lot of potential as a doctor. Maybe you'd say she could be, has the ability to be a very good doctor.
Okay.
So that's how you could use potential like a noun. Now, because we do this word building thing, like I say here, you could also do potentially as an adverb. You could say potentially, she, like, we often do with adverbs, we put them at the beginning of the sentence. Potentially, she could be a wonderful doctor. Again, the meaning for these sentences is basically the same. She has a lot of potential as a doctor. Potentially, she could be a good doctor. The meaning is really very similar. And then we can do even more crazy stuff where you have potentiality. That was the word, right? Potentiality. So now this is basically a synonym here for possibility. It has the
possibility.
Same. Exactly. It means it's possible. It might happen. It might not happen. But we get words like this in English from this word building thing, right? Potential, potentially, potentiality. We have all these different ways to keep the meaning or the idea the same, but we change the word a little bit, and all of a sudden we have a different part of speech. And again, I think that's Hi Site says hi in the chat. That's one reason that English is really fun, when you start to feel comfortable and you can kind of play with the words. But of course, when you're learning new academic vocabulary, it can feel challenging because there's so many words for the same meaning. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes. And potentiality is adjective.
How is that bit? I don't think, what page is it on?
Page 22. Now I
hold
don't have paper, all paper here.
I've got the electronic copy here on. And this is a good sort of like quick warm up. We'll start in about 1 minute here. Usually I like to give everybody 5 minutes as they're coming in, but we have a question about vocabulary, and I love talking about that stuff. Why translation matters, page 22. Oh, it's from the introduction. Let me see, I've got all these different readings open on my computer here.
Yes, exactly, for introduction. But I think introduction, it was more harder than this chapter 1.
Maybe. And I'm also I'm gonna put it out there. He's an acronym. I'm just going to suggest, I'm gonna put it out there. Everything will feel easier now because I gave you the hardest thing in the beginning. So again, that doesn't mean it's easy. But again, when my metaphor that I use all the time, nothing is ever harder than the first day at the gym, right? That first day is always the hardest. Or if you're changing your diet, right? When we're doing new stuff, the first time we do it is always the hardest. So I'm not disagreeing. I think you're right. Maybe some of the ideas in chapter 1 are easier, but I'm also suggesting that it starts to feel easier. The more we start to practice this muscle of just reading, just read, it starts to feel a little bit easier.
I didn't read. I listened and just I listened.
Oh, good. I love that. Okay, that's good.
I don't know is it a good idea or not, but
Oh, no, I think it's a great idea. Like I said, some people learn very well from listening to things. Some people learn from looking at things. So like I said, whatever works best for you guys, right? Some people do the reading and then listen and then do the reading again. So however helps you learn is great. So let's see this word potentiality. The result of the linguistic infusion of new means of expression is an expansion of vocabulary, evocative potentiality, and structural experimentation. What a sentence. Potentiality is definitely a noun. The adjective evocative is the adjective here. Evocative means exciting, interesting. So the meaning really here is interesting possibility, right? So, interesting possibility. Mir's here and says hi. But that's my little vocab talk at the beginning of class here for potentiality. Same meaning, just a synonym for possibility. Hi everybody, it's really good to see you. I see everybody's sort of coming in. Mir said hi in the chat, and remember, keep your screen off, keep muted if you want, but I see Fauzia's here, and Hoba's here, Angela, Sherry, Samir is here, and Olive, and Rafi, and just good to see you guys, and I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Unless, so that was a great question there about sort of vocabulary stuff. Any short, fast, easy questions right at the beginning of class before I get started and show you the agenda and sort of tell you what we're doing here?
Oh,
Sure, Nadia.
I was a little confused about the dictionary. I used to use Logman.
Yep.
Logman, Pepper Logman. My dictionary. Oh, but what? My dictionary. But you suggest electronic dictionary.
Yep.
What?
Perfect. Thank you, Sadaf. I was just gonna, I suggested Learner's Dictionary. And again, the reason I like this one, I'll put this in the chat. Yeah, the reason
Dictionary.com.
Yep. And the reason I like this one is, like I said, I think the definitions are written for language learners. So one thing that sometimes happens in a dictionary is look up the meaning of a word, and in the definition, there are two new words that you're like, what does that word mean, right? So I think Learner's Dictionary is good because one, it's free. Two, the definitions are written in a way that are supposed to be clear and easy to understand. And you always get example sentences. You know, the Longman might do that too, but just different dictionaries do different things. So if we look at that word potential.
Yes, exactly. I want to tell about, no, it's not.
Yeah, well, exactly. You don't get all the different parts of speech. Now, if we could look up potentially, I'm just curious. Then it goes right to potential. See, again, one of the challenges with any dictionary, there's no perfect dictionary, Nadia. So if you like your Longman, use your Longman, Nadia. You know what I mean? There's not one perfect one. You're not doing anything wrong. I was just offering this to people as, try it, see if you like it. But one challenge for English words is when you look up the word potential in a dictionary, it won't give you every other word form, right? It won't say potential, also potentially, adverb, potentiality. Now, right? I mean, it's different. It's different. Every dictionary is different. So Nadia, whatever dictionary you like, use it. If you want to try this website, try it out, see if you like it. That's what I would suggest.
I have other question again.
Is it a big question or a little question?
I don't know. It's page 40, page 48 in chapter 1, page 48. I have vocabulary perspicacity.
Picturesque, I think, right? Let me see.
Page 48.
Oh, 48, forgive me. Paris.
Exactly is paragraph 1, the end of the paragraph 1 is yes, you are right. The end of paragraph 1 to I can see a perspicacity in discussing the word and the thoughtful attention.
Perspicacity, really, again, very, 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 very academic, yeah.
Yes.
So again, the best thing to do, I think, here at perspicacity. Here's another little thing. I don't want to spend too much time here because I do want to introduce some stuff. But if you're interested, you could look up in English. You might have seen this before, suffix and prefix, right? So a suffix means set of letters at the end of a word that give meaning. The most obvious example here in English that you probably all know is ing, right? That's a suffix. If you put ing at the end of a verb, it makes it into the progressive participle, right? Prefix is a set of letters at the beginning of a word that gives meaning. And the examples here would be, so prefix, what would other, like possible. What happens when I say the word possible, but then when I change it to impossible, what happens? Or when I say no, exactly. And then I change it to unknown, right? These at the beginning of a word is a prefix, right?
Yes.
Im is a prefix. These are these little words, and it's not just for known, right? We could do what's another good prefix for unknown, unseen, unheard, whatever, right? Un gives meaning. It means not, right? It's a negative prefix. And I'm mentioning this because this one, acity, is a suffix for making a word a noun, okay? Acity, if you see A-I-C-T-Y at the end of a word in English, it's gonna be a noun, but that probably means it could also be another unbelievable. Thank you, Sherry, absolutely. Thank you. Let's see if I can spell it right. Yeah, and think about this one. How about this word? Capable. Do you guys know this word? Capable. She is very capable. What does that mean?
It's as a capacity, like something ability.
She has ability.
Yes, and we do, and then capable becomes this, capacity. And say it means the ability, meaning it describes a thing. A capacity means the ability to do something, unability, right? It turns into a noun. So when you see this very interesting word here, perspicacity, even if you don't know what it means, you start to know, okay, acity, it must be a noun, that must be, that something's going on there. Perspicacity. I think I spelled it wrong. Did you look it up in the dictionary? Perspicacity. And notice when you search perspicacity, it gives us the adjective, right? It doesn't give us the noun form, it gives us the adjective. But again, when you start to recognize these suffixes and prefixes in English, you'll start, what you see is it's exactly like your earlier example as well, right? It's the same meaning. The word is trying to give you the same meaning, but we've changed the word form to change the part of speech. So the adjective means having or showing an ability to notice and understand things that are difficult or not obvious. She considers herself a perspicacious character. The critic made some perspicacious observations about the film. When we go back to the text, Larissa, I'm going to butcher this Russian name, forgive me, published by NAF. I'll cite a few sentences from this review to give you an idea of Wood's perspicacity in discussing the work. So if she says that Wood, the reviewer, it has, owns, uses this thing, perspicacity, what does that mean? Is that at first, let's go simple. Is that a positive way to describe something or negative?
Positive.
Positive.
Yes, thank you, Makwoba. And it means this, right? It means, so, and would you say that she's saying this critic has really smart things to say or stupid things to say?
Smart things to say.
Exactly right, right? And so even though we don't have this exact same word perspicacity in the dictionary, we get another word form, we get the same meaning just like an adjective, and we see that, okay, with the suffix, it becomes a noun. Does that help? Positive, thank you, Reina. Ermaya, does that help explain perspicacity? And both of your examples were about word forms, so it's really interesting. It's really helpful.
Thank you so much for your help.
Oh, my pleasure. It's my job. I think it's really helpful for everybody too. I know maybe you didn't have the exact same questions as Ermaya, but word forms, different shapes, different word forms to change part of speech are such a normal part of English, and it happens all the time. So even if you didn't have the same question, hopefully it makes sense. You'll start to see these examples. Reminds me of the word perspective. Yeah. Reina saying perspective. Sounds very similar. Different meaning. Different meaning. Cool. That was a fun. We'll call that our warm-up today, you guys. A little vocab warm-up. That was fun. I loved reading your sentences. Like I said, I love the vocab activity. I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope it doesn't take too long, but I think it's super interesting. I love reading your sentences, and I think it's really fun when you guys get to choose the words, because then it's more interesting to you, I hope. So I hope you enjoy. I hope you enjoyed. I don't know what's so funny, but okay. Okay. Let's get started for today. So today is Thursday, February 11th. It is so good to see you all and talk about all of your perspicacity, all of your perspicacious questions for class today. So here's our agenda. I've got a short warm-up activity planned. Then I'm going to introduce narrative writing. We're going to take a little break from the reading strategies this week, and I'm going to introduce a map is only one story. I'm going to introduce the structure of narrative writing, and I'm going to introduce the first major writing assignment, which is going to be, I'm not even going to call this a language narrative anymore. We're just going to call this a first person narrative. So that's the plan for today. I will keep this slide in here, you guys. So when I publish the slides in Canvas, you can see all the notes that I sort of took here about our vocab. But there is a warm-up question that I had. And you know what? Even though we spent time doing vocab, I'm still going to put you guys into groups because I'm going to talk a lot today. So I want you to talk a little bit to each other. So I'm going to put you into the breakout rooms. Maybe we'll just do a few minutes today, not the full 10 minutes. But here are the questions I want you to talk to each other about. One, what do you already know about narrative writing? And if the answer is nothing, that's totally fine. Two, what do you remember about examples of narrative writing that you've read in the past? And three, if you read any of the essays in A Map is Only One Story, if you started reading at all, what did you notice? What happens in these stories? What do you notice about them, right? So these are the three questions I want you to talk about in your groups. Of course, you can talk about anything else that comes up and how you're doing, what's going on. But again, remember, I like to do this just so you remember you are not alone in this class. There are other human beings who are studying with you in this class, even though you will never see them. Any questions about these three questions before I put you in your groups? All right, let me get the rooms ready. If you do have questions, speak now. All right, like usual, I will put the questions in the group, but just a chance to talk to each other and talk about narratives. What do we know? Because that's what today is all about. Rooms are opening now, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Yes, Amsterdam. We are in breakout rooms. So if you can, if you can talk right now, I'll put you in a breakout room. You can go talk to a small group. If not, that's okay. You can keep your screen off and stay muted, whatever works for you, okay?
I don't know why my internet got off, so that's why it
Oh,
kicked me out.
were you already in a group? Oh, I think I see.
Yeah,
Were you in? Oh, go
I
ahead.
was in a group, but I don't know what happened.
No problem. No problem at all. I'll send you, I think you were in group 5. I'll send you right back there.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. What happened?
If you click, you might have to click on, at the bottom, just click on breakout rooms again and then click join because I put you in there. You just have to join.
Sorry, can you please join my professor? By
Yep.
mistake, I disconnected.
You were with Rafi and Sherry, right? And Veronica?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yep. We're in small groups and we're coming back in just 2 minutes. So stay with me in the main room for just a couple minutes and then everybody will be back, okay?
Okay.
Recording in progress. Progress.
I love seeing everybody with their coffee or whatever you guys are drinking. It wasn't just you, Susanna, it was multiple people. As I see people's video, and it's just
You know what's funny? This is my second cup of coffee.
I cannot confirm or deny. This might be my third cup. Okay, so I understand.
Oh my God.
I started
Joy.
without the coffee and I feel lost. So.
On Wednesday and Thursday, Wednesday and Thursdays are my lots of Zoom on Wednesday and Thursdays. They are I hit it pretty hard on Wednesday and Thursday. I do.
For sure.
Always weekend is a little hard.
All right, so hopefully it's good to see your classmates and talk to each other, and hopefully talk a little bit about life and school, but also a little bit about narratives. Let's start at the bottom here, group 6. So that was Angela, Amina, Eremaya, and Susanna. Who's going to share, and what'd you guys talk about? What do you know about narratives? Because that's what we're just going to do before we get.
We don't know about a narrative.
Okay.
But before it's the same Bible. We have a lot of immigrants. They move, and they try to find some place to live and we have in America. But I read in Farsi, different language about I don't know, the immigrant, or I don't know.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else?
Just like because I did not start reading the book yet.
Okay, all good. I didn't ask you to. Some people I didn't ask you to, so not a problem.
Yeah, I was supposed to, but I just like literally had no time this week. So, but I know like narrative writing, it's like telling the story. So whatever Layla was reading, like she was kind of introducing what happened in the book. We were kind of trying to figure out, okay, this is a narrative writing. So whoever it talks about the story, like telling some story about the immigrants, about like some Mexican guy who came, the family left. So that's what I understood. So we were figuring out, okay, this is a narrative writing. So this is the style.
Excuse me, for this story, I didn't find any goal to share, but I catch this. They have a family on the other side of the board, and other thing, and they want to connect with their family, but it's too hard. Because the American government makes everything hard for them. And other thing, this is I don't know which page. Okay. And people always try to come to America because they thinking if they dream makes happen. And other thing, American broke promise to share water, the water, and when the American government broke the promise, they didn't have water to grow the food, and they don't have food. And when no food, the people try to find some place just for live, to continue to live. It's a little sad story, but it was, I don't know.
I promise you will know much more after today's lecture, because what I'm going to teach you today, or try to teach you, I'll do my best, like always, is when you're reading a story, especially a story that's published in a book, hopefully a good book that a teacher chose to put on the class for a reason. It's narratives are stories. So Susanna said it perfectly. But of course, they're not just stories, right? Hopefully there's something real, something deeper, something more going on. But it is different than what we're used to in college, which is usually in a non-fiction writing, in research, in college writing. There's always a thesis statement, and the author says, right, the goal of this paper is, right, I'm going to tell you this. Now, narrative writing, I'll tell you right now, it doesn't do that, right? The author who's telling about their experience doesn't say, hey, guess what, everybody? I'm telling you this story because I want you to feel blah, 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 blah. No, and think about that. It's not like movies either. At the beginning of a movie, the director doesn't come on and say, okay, I really want you to understand.
Excuse me, but for Jamila Osman is different. Jamila Osman, the end of the story, you can understand what she's goal. It's been to a story.
Well, we're going to talk specifically about Jamila Osman today. That's exactly what we're doing. So anyway,
my understanding, it's characterized.
We're gonna, and we'll talk about that a little bit about characters and stuff, but let me hear from the other groups, and then I promise I will answer all of these questions. Group 5, that's Mir, Olina, Reina, and Sabzina. Did you guys talk about what do you know anything? What did you know? What'd you talk about? Just someone from your group. What'd you talk about?
I am in group. I am.
No, group 5 was Mir, Olena, Reina, and Sabzina. Just one person who could share anything you talked about.
Reina, I am Reina. Yes.
Reina.
Yes, we were talking about narrative writing, and we understand that narrative writing is when we write a story in a chronological order.
Ooh, okay. And for people who maybe don't know, Reina, what does chronological mean?
Chronological is when we have a clear idea about when something begins, when is the middle, when is the end.
Thank you. Good. You'll see this on the slide. That's exactly right. Clear beginning, middle, and end. I totally agree, Reina. I totally agree.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Reina. Fantastic. Great. Yeah. So just again, I'm only moving fast because I want to make sure I answer Edema and Susanna's good questions about, okay, Jeff, let's talk about what a narrative is, but how to do it. So forgive me for moving fast, but Reina, thank you so much, group 5. Room 4, Fauzia, Nasima, Rukshan, anybody, what'd you guys say? What do you know? What did you talk about? Anybody?
Narratives are written or speaking about an event or a story with our own word.
Got it. Good. Could you say, so I'm asking sort of, I'm suggesting maybe something with my question, but if it's our own story, then when we're writing, are we going to say, she did this, he did that, or I did, like, do we use a certain pronoun when we're telling this story, Fauzia?
We said about ourselves with I pronoun.
Thank you. Good. Yeah, and we could say usually let's just call these first person, because we could say, you could also say our or we or my, right? First person.
First person, yeah, exactly.
Great. I love it. I knew if I made that suggestion, I knew, Fazia, you would you'd pick it up for me. So thank you so much. I know we've got some good ideas already. So my final groups, if you're just saying we agree with everybody, that's fine. But how about room 3? That's Olive and Mahaba, Nadia. That's your turn, Nadia, and Samira. Anything you guys want to share from your group? What'd you talk about?
We talk about narrative. We have something experience, but we have a question: biography, short story, narrative writing, essay. What is different? What is different between these type of writing?
Now I'm just sort of thinking, is there a difference between a narrative and a biography? It's almost like a biography. It's I was going to say no, but it's almost like a biography or an autobiography, right? Autobiography is when the person writes the story of their own life. It's almost like a biography and an autobiography are a special, specific type of narrative, right? So the rules I'm going to teach you today, the structure I'm going to teach you today, I mean, you see that same structure in a biography and an autobiography, but when you only have a shorter kind of essay, and the stories in A Map is Only One Country, they're not very, very long, right? It's not like a whole book biography. So because of how long the narrative might be, some of those things could change, the details and examples. But overall, what I teach you today, the structure of narrative writing, I mean, it's kind of the same thing that you'd see in a biography or an autobiography. It really, really is. And
I
something
think
narrative essays have different timelines. I'm just sorry, I'm reading in the chat. Subzina says narrative essays have different timelines. Good. And I think that kind of goes along with what we were saying about clear chronological order, like Reina was saying, beginning, middle, and end, and all that good stuff, right? So yeah, Rafi, I see your hand, or anybody else, go ahead, jump in.
Okay. Is it okay from one article everybody has mm, um, own narrative? Maybe these are different together. It seems different together from one article.
Say, okay, I think I know what you're asking, but I want to be clear. So are you asking if everybody reads the same story, the same narrative, or are you saying if everybody writes a different narrative? I just want to make sure I'm clear on your question, Rafi.
My question is, for example, you gave us a story, you give us a story, and we read, but the end we should write a narrative, and everybody has its own narrative, and they look different together. Is it okay for narrative style?
And I see, hold on. Okay, Rafi, as usual, Rafi is asking excellent questions, but difficult questions, because the answer to your question, Rafi, is kind of what we're going to practice today, which is, okay, so when you're writing a narrative, there is kind of one way to do it. There is a structure that I'm going to teach you today. Now, what makes narrative difficult to understand as a reader, and why I sort of plan the lessons I have for today and next week, and why we kind of go slow with practicing reading a narrative, is because a narrative is not a research paper, right? It does not have one perfect thesis statement. So if we have 30 people in this class, right? 30 people read one narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they might have different feelings about what that narrative means, what it's about. They might have slightly different feelings, and that's going to be okay, right? But there are kind of like, there is like a fence around it, right? Like if you read a narrative about, like we were talking about, a lot of the narratives in A Map is Only One Story are immigrant narratives, okay? So if you read those stories and you go, oh, well, the main idea, or, you know, this narrative is clearly about, I don't know, like global banking policy or something, like that's wrong. You know what I mean? Like if the idea isn't in the story, there is such thing as right and wrong, but because there's not this one clear, perfect thesis statement, some people might have different feelings and opinions about it at the end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's what's really hard. It's such a good question, Rafi, because we're going to practice this today, right? And trying to identify the main idea in a narrative is hard for a lot of, not just ESL learners, you guys, for native speakers. It's because it is a little bit different type of writing than a research paper or just nonfiction, right? Like there is a little bit of art in it. And that's like Susanna's question about, okay, is this about characters? And it is kind of about something like creative writing, but there is a structure that I'm going to teach you, and we're going to review, and we're going to practice together. So that's one thing that makes this challenging, Rafi. Yeah, please go ahead.
Thank you.
When we're talking about narrative is describing something that happened to you or someone.
Pretty much, yeah. You're kind of.
It has to be true or not.
For the type of narrative that we're going to do this semester in this class, yes. Usually it is a first person experience that happened to you or someone you know. The idea is that it is something from real life. Yes. That's the idea. Yeah.
But it can be like you can say that it's not true.
Say again, it can be like life?
The narrative, yeah. It can be like imagination.
For this assignment, like when we read a map is only one country, and when I ask you to write the narrative this semester, I am going to ask, if you can, if you feel safe, if you feel comfortable, writing a real personal experience. Because you're right, when we say narrative, we can talk about narrative from a novel. You could talk about the narrative of a movie, because really narrative does just mean story with beginning, middle, and end. And you can have a true story with beginning, middle, and end, and an imaginative story with beginning, middle, and end. But we're gonna practice reading in the book. They are real, true stories. True stories. I'm gonna add that to the list because that's a great point.
Thank you.
Narratives can be real or fictional. But the examples we will read this semester are factual or nonfiction, right? Great question. How about just maybe one or two more people? Room 2, that was Ange. Oh, Rafi, thank you for your question, Rafi. I'm going to count that for room 2. I just want to make sure I have enough time to answer all these amazing questions. How about room 1 before I start talking a little bit more? Malele, Sadaf, Syed, and Sudaba, anything else you want to add to this great list?
So my understanding from narrative writing is that I think narrative writing is officially described as a writing that is characterized by a main character, I think. So it is in a setting who engages with problem or even in a significant way, like attentionable way.
Good. Sadaf is sort of asking the same question or connecting to some of the ideas Susanna was saying. And this is what I mean, why this can feel challenging, right? Narrative can be both true stories and fiction stories. But again, for right or wrong, I'm not saying good or bad. I'm just saying usually we separate things like character, plot, setting. For fiction, for literary analysis, like I'm teaching W350 right now, right? When we analyze a novel, we talk a lot more about that. And in nonfiction writing, in an academic, very serious class like this, we tend to talk about, I'll show you the other words we use, but you're not wrong, Sadaf, because of course, if it's a story with a beginning, middle, and end, there will be characters, right? There will be events, there will be a setting, right? The story happens somewhere. So yeah, you're not wrong at all. But I'm gonna talk about a few different vocab words. Does that make sense, Sadaf?
Yes, because last semester we wrote like 6 narrative writing. All
Good.
of them was about real life.
Good. In 315?
Yes.
Oh, good. Well, you'll be very ready for this assignment. I'm going to add, we'll see. Maybe you'll see who was your teacher? Margaret, Professor Travis?
Yes, Professor Margaret.
Hey, oh, good. We're going to find out.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The narrative will be in the past tense.
Yes, for this class, yes. Of course, not always. When you go to a fiction class, if you read literature, people sort of can imagine future worlds and use the. I mean, but for this, the stories we're going to read in the book for this class, past tense, things that have happened, right? Things that are done. Setting plot. Amazing. That was fantastic, you guys. Thank you so much. I'm very confident because if this is what you already know, I think you're going to be fine. So I'll show you how I want to talk about it in this class, and then we're going to practice analyzing a narrative and trying to find some of these specific structural elements in a story. So that's what we're going to do today. So what is a first person narrative? So if you're like Sadaf, if you took 315 and you practice narrative writing, some of this might look familiar, but I might use different words to describe it than Professor Travis did. So a first person narrative is a type of creative or academic writing that expresses the relationship between the writer's experience and their identity. The writer does this through a narrative telling a story. They introduce a theme They describe their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, and then return to this theme throughout the narrative. Now, when I say theme, right? So these are the three sort of parts of structure, the three aspects of narrative writing structure that I really want you to get familiar with. Okay, so when I say theme, that's usually what we might call the main idea, right? So in this type of narrative writing structure, the theme is usually introduced early in the writing. The theme is usually returned to throughout the writing. So the theme or the main idea keeps coming up in the story. The author usually does this by using key words or key ideas, key images that keep repeating and repeating, right? And we're going to see some of that in the example of the story that we read today. And then the main idea, the theme, is often synthesized or referred back to at the end of the narrative, right? So this will look familiar. It kind of feels a little bit like, okay, thesis statement at the end of the first paragraph. Well, at the beginning of a good narrative, you have to give the reader some idea of the main idea. What's the point, right? Because think about this. We all know maybe a friend or a family member, they love to tell stories, right? But at the end of the story, you're like, what was that story about? Like, who cares? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, the craziest thing happened today, man. Like, I got up early and then I had to go to the bank and I got in my car and I drove to the bank and then I was standing in line and I talked to the teller for like 20 minutes. And you're like, what? What? Who cares? There's no what's that story about? Like, you've got a plot, you've got beginning, middle, and end, but like, who cares? You know, so the theme really helps answer the question, why am I telling this story? Why is this story important? Who cares, right? The theme really answers that question for us, right? So this will take a little bit of practice to start to recognize, because it's not like a 5-paragraph essay. I can't tell you, okay, look at the last sentence of the first paragraph, and that's where the author has to let you know what the theme is. No, I mean, it moves around a little bit, but again, you have to introduce it at the beginning of the story. You really have to at least introduce the idea. Angela says, this is the first time I've heard about narrative. It's all good, Angela. You're exactly where you need to be. It's all good. So that's the theme. Now, there's also in narrative writing, what you would expect, there's narrative writing. So narrative writing, as we perfectly said on this slide here, narrative writing just means you're telling a story with a clear beginning, middle, and end, right? And now, usually, Reina was saying that might be in chronological order, right? You might be on Monday, this happened, then on Tuesday, then Wednesday, finally Thursday. Okay, that makes sense. But even if you jump around in time, you still need to have the reader finish the story, hopefully, with the idea that, okay, I understand beginning, middle, and end, right? Another aspect of this type of narrative writing is, as I say at the top of the slide, first person narrative structure means we use first person pronouns. I, we, our, my, you know, and we use those first person pronouns throughout the writing. Now, the other thing, I think the hardest part of this assignment for students when I teach it is that last bullet point that says the story must have a clear connection to the theme, right? Everybody in this class is going to be able to write me a 2-page or 3-page story. Like Sedaf was saying, she practiced 6 of them last semester, right? But what is hard for students is when I say, okay, great, the narrative is very clear beginning, middle, and end, but what's the theme? What's the meaning? How does this story, who cares, right? This is what's really tricky for students. So I'll keep saying this over and over again, but as you start to think about this, as you start to read A Map is Only One Story, I do want you to be asking yourself, and this is part of that critical thinking we talked about in the first week, the first session of class. What is the author telling me about themselves, about their family, about their identity, who they are, what's important to them? What does this story show me about who that person is, who the author is, instead of just what happened, right? I don't want you to read these stories. It's why I don't do reading quizzes about this book, right? It's not like, well, what happened to the character in 1979? Who cares, right? That's not the point. It's not just to read and tell me what happened in the story. At this level, I want you to be able to sort of extract, take out of the narrative what the theme is. That's what we're going to practice, right? And that's what's usually new for people. So last slide, and then I'm ready to take questions. And then the last part of the structure of narrative writing. So a good narrative essay also needs what's called descriptive writing. Now, descriptive writing is used throughout the entire narrative. And descriptive writing is any type of sentence or example that uses a lot of specific details connected to the 5 senses. So when the author tells you what something looked like, what something smelled like, or when the author says, oh, my mom turned to me and she said, and then you get a quote, right? What it sounded like. This type of descriptive detail is really, really important to making an interesting and good narrative. Because like I said in my bad example, my bad example of a bad story, right? I got up, I got in my car, I went to the bank, I deposited money, I talked to the person working at the bank. Okay, kind of has a beginning, middle, and an end, but no detail, right? What was it raining outside? There's no descriptive detail, which makes the story boring, I think. So a story, a good story, needs descriptive writing, needs specific images, words, descriptions of things and people and places that allow the reader to see what's happening in the story. Now, I say at the last point here, the last bullet point, the descriptive writing may be connected to the theme or it may not be connected to the theme. But the most important thing I want you to think about is the descriptive writing is what gives the narrative, it makes it interesting. Another image that I use a lot, or metaphor, is if you think of a human body, the narrative is like the skeleton, right? The narrative is the bones. The narrative, beginning, middle, and end, means the story can stand up and walk around, right? But the descriptive writing is like the muscles and the sinew. It's like the skin. It's what makes it actually come alive. You know, it's what actually gives the narrative, the bones, makes it interesting and makes it feel real, right? So what we're going to do now is we're gonna read together. I'm gonna read with you guys, and then we're gonna practice identifying these things. But before we practice together, questions about these 3 things, about theme, narrative, and descriptive writing, before we practice. I see in the chat, hold on. This was a good example. Thanks, Mir. Yeah, anybody, please, Mahbouba. Mahbouba, do you have a question?
No, perfect.
Okay. Does anybody have a question about theme, narrative, and descriptive writing before we practice together? I hear my own robot voice. All right, we're ready to practice. I love it. Okay, I am going to read, I'm going to read out loud today, and I want you to follow along with me. I'm going to read the Jamila Olsen story, A Map of Lost Things. So Angela, I see your hand. Hold on 1 second. So go ahead. You can open your book to page, what page does it start on? 15. Or you can follow along on your screen with me, whatever you want. I'm going to read through the story, and I'd love for you to follow along with me while I read. And while you're listening, while you're reading, all I want you to start to notice is asking yourself these questions. Do I see a theme? Do I see examples of narrative writing? Do I see examples of descriptive writing, right? Descriptions of what it looked like, felt like, sounded like, smelled like. Do I see examples of narrative, right? Because what you'll also start to find out is in a 10-page story, there is one main narrative, but you might have little stories inside of the main narrative, right? Like most stories do kind of have part 1, part 2, part 3, and they come together to make up this bigger story. So that's what I want you to do while we're reading through this, is see if you can identify or recognize some of these different types of narrative writing, these structures, okay? Angela, I see your hand. Tell me, what's up?
Yeah, I have a question. We could basically say like narrative is it's like a type or form of writing, right?
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah.
because it's my first time.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, the word that you'll see for the rest of your life in college is this word. I think I said it once, but I didn't put it in the slide. Genre. And exactly what you just said, Angela. A genre is a specific type, right? a genre of writing, a genre of movies. So I think my example for students is always think about movies. There are scary movies and funny movies and action movies, and all of those are different genres, different types of movie. And exactly like you said, we have different types of writing, and with those different types of writing, different structure, different rules, different expectations.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions before we read together? Let's go. Great. So I'm just going to read the story through, you guys. Feel free to turn your screen off, whatever you need to do to feel comfortable, but I'm just going to read through and then we'll be ready to talk about it at the end, okay? So I'm here on page 15. This is called A Map of Lost Things by Jamila Osman. When I was in the 4th grade in Portland, we spent 3 months studying the Chinook salmon, the Oregon state fish. Our unit culminated in a class field trip to a small creek off the Columbia River Gorge. At Eagle Creek, a small basin where the Columbia River runs into the Pacific, the Chinook salmon comes to spawn, having crossed thousands of miles of sea in a journey that takes many years. When the female salmon finds her way back to the same estuary of her birth, she will lay anywhere from 3,000 to 14,000 eggs before dying. The estuary is where the river meets the sea. It is the collision of 2 worlds. It is where the new world meets the old world, where life crashes headfirst into death. Death is always the final act. As we watched the salmon return to the estuaries they'd left so many years ago, I was filled with a jealousy that hollowed out my chest. I envied the salmon and their bloated bodies, the way they shimmered under the water when the sun's rays caught against their scales. I have returned to this same creek many times as an adult, and I still feel the same sense of jealousy I felt at 10 years old. I sit on the wet earth and hold my knees against my chest as I watch the salmon spawn. On clear nights at the creek, the moon floats just over the surface of the water. The landscape is blurred and distorted, hazy and untrue in the mirror of the water. I look at the moon against the river and feel a hunger crest in me. The salmon return at the same time every year, haggard, gray, molten. I envy the certainty of their journey. Sometimes I run into hikers and tourists as I walk the trail to the creek. Where are you from? They will inevitably ask me. Portland? I answer their question with a question of my own. Portland? My last syllable lifts its head in desire. Nobody leaves home thinking they'll never be able to return. I wonder what my parents would have taken with them when they left their home in Somalia in the late 80s. Who might they have made amends with? What old haunts would they have visited one last time if they knew they would never be back? My parents ended up in Oregon, and by the time I was in middle school, we'd already lived in 5 different apartment complexes. When my teachers would ask me where I was from, I would shrug. I'd already learned to be a part of a diaspora was to live freely, to make no promises. In phone calls to faraway relatives, my parents always swore they would return, but distance and time make liars of us all. It was not that my family disliked Portland. We loved many things about the city, especially its spring days, warm and wet, but it was a cautious love. My parents had loved a place once before, and neither of them had ever fully recovered from the war that had leveled Somalia in the early 90s or its aftermath. How could they recover? War is not a cough, it is a cancer. The Somali government officially collapsed in 1991. My parents, abroad at the time, found themselves unable to return. Newly married, my mother pregnant with me, they lived for a brief time in Canada. During their first winter in Edmonton, there was a devastating snowstorm. My mother had never seen snow before. Her lips and knuckles were always bleeding in the cold. Everything in this new world was a small wound. My father, previously a student, became a cab driver in this new country. It didn't take him long before he had no longer needed to use a map to take people to the places they needed to go. Banks and doctor's appointments, hair salons and shopping malls. Soon he knew his way around Alberta so well that if he didn't speak with an accent, one would have thought he was born and raised there. He knew which roads to take and which to avoid. He knew the fastest route to the airport and where to find the back roads when the city closed around him like a fist. My father always kept an atlas in the glove compartment of our family's minivan. Before road trips, he would pull it out and lay it flat on the dashboard, showing us where we were going. He would run a finger back and forth between small streets and major roads, rivers, and borders. My younger sister, Ayan, and I would fight over who would get the privilege of unfolding the map for him. When it was my turn, I savored the crinkle of the parchment and the slow blooming of the world in front of me. Maps held a type of magic for my father. In our living room, he would pull out world maps, drag a finger through an ocean, point to Saudi Arabia and say, "This is where my mother is." Other times, he would point to where his aunts and uncles, various cousins lived, Somalia, India, Denmark, Canada, hundreds and thousands of miles apart, but neighboring countries in his heart. My father knew how to get everywhere. It was what we always admired most about him. But even he, who could name the capitals of countries all over the world, could never figure out how to go back home. After 4 years in Alberta, my parents arrived in Portland in 1996. They cobbled together a life and gave birth to 4 more children. They did their best to raise us in a way, in a world they no longer recognized. Portland was nothing more than the city in which they lived until it became, suddenly and without warning, the city in which my sister died. The day after her funeral, my mother and I sat on the couch holding hands. "This was never supposed to be home," she said through her tears. "But Ayan is here. How can we ever leave?" We buried my sister and we put down roots. Grief transforms the topography. On a map, I can point to the intersection where the car accident took my sister's life, the street funeral home is located, the cemetery where she's buried. But a map doesn't show the blood pooling on the pavement, the glass scattered at the edge of the road, the skid marks, the acrid smell of burning rubber. A map does not proclaim that the United States is Indian country, occupied land. On a map, someone can trace a finger from one anglicized city name to another and forget these lands were and are known by other names. Maps are a polite fiction. They never tell the whole story. They don't mark important things like graves or genocides. 30 years after ousting of British and Italian colonial forces from Somalia, a civil war erupted, a volcano turning the country to ash. The northern region declared itself an autonomous state called Somaliland. "We are our own country," they proclaimed as the war raged on. They drew the cloak of British borders tight around themselves. When the colonists came, they committed our edges to paper. They tried to cage us with their borders. A country is impossible to contain. People are impossible to boil to the silt of parchment. A map is only one story. It's the most important story. The most important story is the one a people tell about themselves. I visit Hargeisa, a capital of Somaliland, for the first time in 2012. The northern region of Somalia had remained relatively stable and peaceful since the mid-90s, even as the southern region was besieged by Al-Shabaab and US drone strikes. I imagine my parents' first airplane ride, their racing hearts and quick breathing. Maybe they dug their fingers into their thighs, their nails, marking half moons on their skin. I'm not the first to cross an ocean in search of something elusive and intangible. I think of the war and the period of mass exodus when everyone who was able to flee the country left. Only those who were too poor or too old or too full of hope stayed behind. Hope makes children of us all reckless, foolish, and devout. Hargeisa is not what I expect it will be. But the things we wait the longest for seldom are. The city is dry and the air crackles. The dirt is fine and coats clothes and skin. The trees are scraggly and flimsy. Everywhere I look, there are buildings collapsing in on themselves, piles of concrete and empty houses. Hargeisa is the city of my mother's birth, the city where my grandmother cut her teeth on the rough realities of womanhood. My grandmother, who lived with us for a few years in Portland before moving back home because she missed it so much, shows me around the city. She's embarrassed by the men in FC Barcelona shirts and the way they shuffle dragging donkeys down dirt roads, hustling lukewarm water in enormous canteens. She's embarrassed by the piles of trash that stink in the blazing heat of a Hargeisa afternoon. It is an embarrassment that is tempered by her love for this place. Even here, in the land of my ancestors, I wear my foreignness like an ill-fitting dress. When I go to the market with my grandmother, shopkeepers leer at me and call me the American girl. I wonder what part of my body has betrayed me. I wonder in what way I'm branded. They wink at me and wave their products in my face. Spend your American dollars here. Somalis call those of us who return to visit Daken Selis. It is a story in two parts. Dakan means culture. Selis is a return. We are a roving tribe of wanderers, scattered siblings, lost youth, reluctant expatriates, victims of impossible and auspicious circumstances. Everyone looks at us like we're lost. They ask us what we've come to find. We have no answers. A body always returns to the place that shaped it. A body always returns to its ghosts. For years, scientists have speculated as to how salmon find their way back to their natal streams. One widely accepted hypothesis states that when salmon are young, they imprint the pattern of Earth's magnetic field where they're born. Years later, this memory serves as an internal GPS. The last stretch of salmon's journey is the most dangerous. The closer it gets to home, the more perilous the trek becomes. Sailors used to call salmon the leaping fish. They launch their bodies over entire waterfalls and sometimes land directly in the mouths of waiting bears. Today, the Chinook salmon is on the endangered species list. Fluctuating sea temperatures, man-made dams, and declining water levels make the journey home nearly impossible. Every spring, fish biologists report increasingly high numbers of salmon carcasses in local rivers. According to a study conducted by scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Oregon salmon are slowly being pushed north towards Alaska as a direct result of climate change. Ocean temperatures continue to rise. Salmon will seek out waters that better mirror the conditions to which they're adapted. In time, some species of salmon may disappear completely from the Pacific Northwest. In the summer of 2015, 1 year after my sister's death, my parents, my 4 siblings, and I take a trip back to Edmonton, Alberta. Canada is our shared ground zero, my family's original sin. My father's made the trip enough times that he's committed the route to memory. There's no need to consult a map. I now wonder if maps have lost their magic for him, if he too has recognized that the places to which we are most desperate to return might not exist at all. Driving south on US 95, we come to a small stretch of unincorporated land between the United States and Canada. I ask my father to pull over and I get out of the car. I cry on the side of the road. I am mourning my sister, our shared childhood, the unfamiliarity of the world that now beckons me forward. 1 foot in Canada, 1 in the United States. I'm a woman like the women before me, legs spread indecently, straddling worlds, caught between cities and countries and continents. On that trip of land between the 2 countries, I realized I've always belonged everywhere at once, on the road, in liminal spaces, in the disputed territory between Somalia and Ethiopia, where my father spent the ragged days of his youth. I've always belonged at the beginning of the world and where it seems to end, where the sky meets the sea, where the sea meets the land, on a plain where the two become indistinguishable from each other and you can no longer tell if you're going home or leaving it. Where are you from? People still ask me, but the answer is not simple. I am from a place beyond the scope of any map or road atlas. I am from a house of borrowed things, a land of irreconcilable and devastating losses, a terrain marked by grief. I'm from nomads who moved in search of water, carving a home wherever they ended up, like water carves its shape into rock. I'm from a wild hope, a blinding courage, a blur, and a madness uncharted by any cartographer. I am from a land unmapped and entirely my own. When I visit Somaliland for the first time, I stay long enough to imagine I will be there forever. Friends from Portland call me and ask me when I will return home. Their questions jar me. As I pack to leave, my grandmother asks me to stay with her. I tell her I will return soon. We're always making promises we cannot keep. Go or stay, either way, something's lost. Home is not an answer to a question. It is my grandmother's front porch where I first saw how dark the night sky was supposed to be. It is the swimming pool in our first apartment complex in Portland where I learned to see without looking, underwater with my eyes closed like the mermaid I knew I was. It is the spot where my sister is buried. It is Eagle Creek where the salmon spawn and then die, using their last reserve energy to protect their eggs. The journey home is arduous. Surviving costs something. Returning costs something more. Will I return to the creek when the Chinook salmon no longer swim in these too warm waters? These days, the creek fills me with sadness as fewer and fewer salmon survive the journey each year. The world is changing, and I'm trying not to be leveled by it. I'm trying to find my place in it. A part of me will always be the girl who watched the salmon return, even when there comes a day when they do not. Where my sister used to be, there is only her memory. Soon, where the salmon used to spawn, there will be only their ghosts. To love a thing is to steel yourself against its eventual absence. I am learning to mourn a thing before it is lost. 2 months after I get my driver's license, my parents finally let me drive to my friend Sarah's house alone. She doesn't live far away, and I don't need to take a highway to get there. It's winter, and it gets dark early. I promise them I'll be home before the sun sets. On my way home, I take a wrong turn. I do not realize it until I find myself in a part of Portland I do not recognize. At night, the city is strange and unfamiliar, cloaked in its own uncertainty. The fog swallows what little light my car pitches against the dark. I look around for a landmark, a breadcrumb, anything that will lead me home, but I find nothing. I'm always getting lost. I think it's because I have no point of reference. My heart can't spin itself like a top and tell me what direction to go in. I'm 16 and easily roused to panic. I call my father. I put him on speaker and leave the phone on my lap as I continue to take wrong turn after wrong turn. My grip on the steering wheel tightens. I begin to cry as soon as I hear his voice. I'm stuttering and my words tumble over one another in their haste to get out of my mouth. I hear my mother in the background. Is she crying? What happened? Is she okay? I hear her decibel level rising with each question. My father has always been the calm one to my mother's wild panic. Are you driving? He asks me. Pull over. I pull into the parking lot of an abandoned building. I tell him I'm lost. He asks me for the name of the street I'm on and then instructs me to wait in my car with the doors locked. I do as he asks, and eventually he pulls up beside me in the battered white minivan we've had for way too long. I roll down my window and snivel. Follow me, he says, and I do. I follow him all the way home.
The final, she has a home.
Well, we'll talk about it. Let's do this. Let's take 10 minutes. That's a lot to sit and listen to, but take 10 minutes, take a break, just go get another cup of coffee, take a breath, whatever. I know this is a very emotional story, so give yourself a few minutes. I will start talking about this story, and I promise you, Erumaya, there is a point, there is a theme. I'll teach you how to find it, but we'll start talking about it in 10 minutes. Yes, Susanna, before we take a break, tell me.
I just want to clarify this for me. Is she
Yeah.
comparing herself with the salmon?
Oh, save that question for 10 minutes, Susanna. When we come back at 1:45, Susanna, ask that question again in 10 minutes, okay, you guys? I will see you in 10 minutes. Take a break, stretch your legs, stretch your brain, and Susanna, ask that question when we come back.
Okay.
Take a 10. I'll see you in a few minutes. right, we're starting to come back. We got about a minute, so if you can hear my voice, run back to the computer. And we'll get started in just a minute. There we go. What? Ah, there we go. Weird. I was having some Zoom. When I shared my screen, I couldn't see you guys, but now you're back. I gotcha. Okay. So hopefully we're all back, or if you can hear me, you're coming back. Susanna's maybe refilling her coffee, but I was going to make her ask her good. Ah, okay. It's only because your question was so good that I want to make you ask it again. Yes. So again, what we're doing now is I'm going to sort of put the this up on the screen and take notes here, but again, what we're doing right now is just practicing recognizing and identifying the structure of the narrative, because in this narrative, which again, I'll just say, I love this story. Again, remember, every person who you read in this book, English is not their first language, right? So again, like, I just think the book is amazing. Some of these stories are amazing, but I love this one a lot. And we're using it to find examples of narrative, theme, and description. So Susanna, start with your beautiful question, and that's what we'll do together. So ask it again.
So first of all, I will say, like, I saw the theme in the reading, because you know, everything was, the idea was like keep repeating, and she was keep coming back, and she was keep comparing, you know, talking about the salmon. That's why I was like, she's comparing herself to salmon. Good. Because she was telling her story, and then she was coming back and talking about the salmon story. So yeah.
And again, and as I say here, remember, I want you to keep going, but remember, one way that you can start to recognize a theme, you guys, and you'll see this in all these stories, is the author will repeat specific words, specific images, specific, like I said, an adjective or an image is a really powerful way of connecting to this theme. So I think you're absolutely right, Susanna, to say, okay, there's this theme of home, going home, returning home, and one image for that theme absolutely is salmon. Absolutely.
And also it was descriptive, right?
Well, let's look. So tell me now what we're starting to do is you see descriptive writing and narrative writing. You're going to see that in all of these examples, right? But go ahead, please, because what can be challenging is how do you connect some of these things together, and how do they work together to create the feeling that the story gives us? So please, do you have examples of descriptive writing that are connected to the theme?
Oh, I have to go there.
Yeah, let's go there.
Oh my God. So I will just give the point, because I don't remember exact you know, the page, but you know, it was talking about the places, you know, and that no, hold on.
Sure.
Hold on. In the beginning, like, she was like explaining everything, right? Like descriptively where the salmons are coming, where the salmons are returning, And
Yes.
some returned to the enthusiasts they had left so many years ago. I was filled with the jealousy that followed like out of my chest, and she was keep going and kind of getting to the into like a small pieces, which like I thought it's like descriptive, because she talks about like about the objects, events, like talks about like a places, where and how, the history and everything. You know what I mean? Like kind of
I
the
do, yeah. I love it so much. I'm just going to add to what Susanna here is saying, because what you see is, even in just, if you're looking at the book on page, and I'm projecting here 15 and 16, right? Just page 15, right? And then on to page 16 only here, right? In just this page and a half, really, we get an example kind of all three of these parts of structure, because those two pages really are a sort of small narrative inside the whole narrative of the essay, right? Because these pages are about the first time she went to visit this place, right? She says, when I was in 4th grade, we spent 3 months studying the salmon, and then we took a field trip to visit the creek. So we have a narrative, right? I was in 3rd grade, we studied the salmon, I went to the creek to see the salmon. Okay, that's a small narrative. Now, inside that narrative, we get all these details. Again, here's a big clue if you guys are practicing identifying descriptive writing. If you're seeing numbers or dates, this is detail, right? This is description. So she says 3,000, 14,000 eggs. One of my favorite descriptive writing on this example is here on page 16. She just is describing what it looks like at nighttime, right? On clear nights at the creek, the moon floats just over the surface of the water. The landscape is blurred and distorted. I look at the moon against the river. It's all just descriptive writing. She's just really trying to give you an image of what it looks like and feels like when she's there, right? So we have this narrative about going to visit Eagle Creek for the first time. Inside of that narrative, we get all these, again, I think, my opinion, beautiful descriptions of what it looks like there. And even on the first page, right, she describes what the salmon look like and how many fish eggs they lay and all that stuff. And then, as Susanna said to us, by the end of the reading, we start to understand that this is connected to the theme of home. And even in this little sort of mini narrative, she introduces this at the end, right? When she says, sometimes I run into hikers and tourists as I walk the trail to the creek. Where are you from? They will inevitably ask me. Portland? And then she says, I answer their question with a question of my own. Portland? So we don't know it yet because we haven't finished the whole story. But even at the beginning, right? When someone says, where are you from? She answers the question with another question. She doesn't know. She has this feeling of, I'm trying to figure it out, or I'm trying to return. I'm trying to go back. So again, even in just a page and a half here, we get this kind of example of all three of these things and how they work together, right? So what else? So does this make this first example? Now I'm looking at everybody. Ibrahim, I see your blue hand up. What's up? Example or questions? What's going on?
No, I want to tell about just a little theme that I find. So, which is he didn't compare her by with her father, but she talked about her father, how he drove, and also how he remembered the maps and the turn or something. But at the very end, she just get a wrong turn, and after wrong turn, a wrong turn, and wrong turn, and she got lost.
Yep.
So I think, yeah, the maps, the GPS, all these are exactly when she talked about his father, and also during these days, like world wars or something like all these. Or for me, it's a theme.
I agree. Now, again, and I love it. I totally agree. And as we discuss this together, remember, I'll plant this seed in all of your brains right now. This is not like a research paper, okay? We can't say, oh, this one sentence is only the theme and there's no description. It's impossible to really kind of fully separate them out, okay? So I don't want you to stress too much about, is this the theme sentence or a narrative sentence? It's not quite like that because Ibrahim, you're right. So is family a separate, different theme from home, or is family connected to home? It doesn't really matter, but you said it perfectly. I think they kind of go together, right? So she gets lost, she calls her dad shows her, they start to connect together. So, but I'm going to put family, father and grandmother in as a theme. And maybe we could even say maps. Is map a symbol or an image that connects to one of those other themes? Is it a theme by itself? Again, this is like Rafi's great question. You know, for some people, when they read this story, they might go, you know what? This story is all about family to me. Okay, totally. And some people might say, you know what? This story is all about home for me. Okay, you know, I mean, that's in there, right? But again, I'm thinking of Rafi's question. What we hopefully what no one says is, this story is definitely about, you know,
About the journey. Dear
yeah,
Professor.
exactly, Samira, right, absolutely. So there's not one right answer, but there is such a thing as a wrong answer. Because if you say, oh, Jeff, this story is about like how to get rich in America. No, it's not. You know what I mean? Like, or if this story is about how easy it is to be an immigrant. No, it's not about that. You know what I mean? Like, so I just keep thinking of Rafi's great question, right? So you might have a different feeling at the end because there kind of is a range of possible feelings, but when a story is as well written as this, there is kind of like, you know, a boundary, you know, to what the theme might be. I'm just going to check the chat. Thank you, Ibrahim. I love everything you said. Reina says, could another theme be identity struggles? Absolutely, right? So identity. Who am I? Absolutely. And then Cherie was saying what? Home where we feel good and safe, and this is life to be, not to be. Okay, so again, home, I'm going to add, safe is really interesting there. Okay, let's just even add that as its own theme. I love that. Safety. And maybe this connects to home and family, right? Absolutely. Good. Who else? Anybody else? Examples of theme, examples of descriptive writing. We're just kind of getting our ideas, our first reactions out there. Anybody else? Let me see your faces again.
Dear Professor, or this narrative paragraph, which is the Jamila wrote about their own life journey. She described very well, perfectly, and she explained her feeling very well, which is the reader when they read her paragraph, and that time the reader feel, and that time when she described at the salmon fish, she described on that time at the night, and when she feeling about her sister, the accident caused, and when she visit her grandmother, and the culture she talking about, she gives is perfect imagination for the reader, and that time with their nice and perfect sentence, which is the reader are feel like I am on that happening and that story.
And Samira, can you remember, I love the word, I love when you were saying the description and the detail. Do you remember a specific image, or when she's describing something from that, when she goes to visit her grandmother, she uses a lot of descriptions, right? To describe what it looks like in Somalia, what she did with her grandmother. Do you remember, does anything stand out in your mind, or do you remember any details?
Yes, when she went to with grandmother to buy something, and people talk about her, and she's from there, but she know all the people, all the culture, same like that to talk about. And when it's very interesting question, she mentioned it in her story, where are you from? When someone and to ask me, where are you from? I'm gonna tell her to, I'm from the map. It's one map is one word, but it gives me a lot of imagination. One map could be a different place, a different area, different countries. As she had an experience from different area, different place. And when she wanted to talk, and she excited at which one I want to talk. She wondering. That is why yes, I like this story.
I love it. I can tell, I can feel, I hear it listening to you talk. I was like, oh yes, Samira liked it. I think I think everything you said is correct. I think you said it, I can tell like you have such good ideas and you're so excited. I love it. And then the other thing that Samira said there, which is exactly correct, is that moment where she's talking about going to buy things with her grandmother. I do think that is absolutely a great example of descriptive writing, right, Samira? We kind of imagine, she said she's got quotes, right? What they call her, the words that they use to describe her. She even puts these words in quotation marks or in italics to sort of make them look special when you're reading, right? It's like, this is what they said, right? You can almost imagine that description of hearing her, right? Hearing what these people are saying. I love that paragraph as an example of descriptive writing, Samira. I think even starting here at the bottom of page 20, she uses a lot of really interesting and fun adjectives to describe what this city looks like, right? So here where it says, the men in FC Barcelona shirts and the way they shuffle, dragging donkeys down dirt roads, hustling lukewarm water in enormous canteens. She's embarrassed by piles of trash that stink in the blazing heat, right? All of these would be, if we look at our examples here, this would be describing Somalia, right? Men in soccer shirts, how hot it is. Oops, forgive me. Ay, 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 ay. Soccer shirts, how hot it is, the dirt in the air, the words used to describe her, right? And even this, just adding on what Samira was saying, remember one thing that's also challenging when you're starting to analyze stories like this is, I'm thinking also of Reina and people talking about chronological order here. You know, she does jump around a little bit, right? She doesn't, it's not just, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. She kind of jumps around a bit. So inside this story, we also get this other narrative about the story of her going to visit her grandma and see Somalia for the first time, right? So that's kind of like its own little narrative inside the big picture narrative, right? And I'd say again, this example connects to kind of what Ibrahim was saying about family, father, grandmother. So we get this theme of family. Connected to that theme of family, we get this narrative about her going to visit her grandmother. And then inside of that narrative, we get a lot of great descriptions, like Samir was saying, what happens when they go shopping, right? What were the men wearing? Donkeys in the streets, dirt in the road. All of those are those descriptive details that really, hopefully, make the narrative come alive, right? Perfect, thank you, Samira. Anybody else, examples or just more sort of discussion, anything I just talked about or things, other things you noticed? Tell me.
Page 21.
Let's go.
A body always return to the place that shaped it. A body always return to its cause.
Yeah.
I want to know what she's idea, what she want to say in this two sentences.
Yeah. Well, let me start here. If I make you choose theme, narrative, or descriptive writing, these two sentences are part of what?
I can see.
Let's see if you can get some help. If I make someone else guess, are these two sentences connected to theme, narrative, or description?
Theme.
Is narrative. Sorry, it's not them.
Who's someone else? Who said theme?
Leila.
I think a few people. Nadia, I agree completely. I think these sentences, remember what I said about theme here too, right? Is theme, you keep returning to the theme. Now this takes skill and practice, okay? I don't expect you all to write a story like Jamila Olsen, but the theme keeps coming up throughout the writing. And if you notice this, right, there's this part on page 21 right here. She goes back to the salmon, right? So she starts with the salmon here on page 15, right? Then she starts to talk about her family, immigration, Canada, whatever. Then she goes back to the salmon. And also notice these last two sentences are right before she goes back to the salmon. So it is kind of like she's preparing the reader to say, okay, again, I always put it this way, but what the theme does is answer this question, who cares? Why are you telling me about visiting your grandmother, right? It's a good story, but as a reader, what am I supposed to understand? So when she says a body always returns to the place that shaped it, a body always returns to its ghosts. Now, is there one perfect answer, Eremai, for what this means? I don't know, because this is a little bit like artistic, right? This is a little bit like fiction. This is a little bit like you could interpret it in different ways. But it definitely is her sort of sharing her feeling about home, about family, about her home country, right? And those big feelings are themed, right? This isn't about a narrative. This isn't a story about a ghost, right? She's using a ghost as a symbol, as a metaphor, as an image to try and explain that feeling. Like Samira was saying, I think one thing Jamila does really well is, even if you don't understand exactly what she's trying to say, I do think the story gives you a real feel. She really does a good job connecting to emotions. And if you're reading a narrative and it's connecting to your emotions, that's the theme, you guys. Because again, we all have read a story that we don't have strong feelings about. We understand it has a beginning, middle, and end, but it might not have a main idea, right? It might not have a theme. But I think those two sentences are examples of how writers keep coming back, keep connecting to the theme throughout the story. Throughout the story. And I'll also say, if you read a sentence that feels symbolic or artistic or poetic in a narrative, it's probably connected to the theme, right? Because if it's straightforward, yesterday we went to the store, the sun was shining bright in the sky was blue and yellow. Oh, that's narrative and descriptive, right? But if you say I looked up at the sky and it felt like my heart was, empty, then it's kind of like, okay, so there's something kind of emotional or poetic or something there that probably is the theme. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
And again, I think it's why the theme is always going to be the hardest to identify. Like I keep thinking of Rafi's question, right? There are themes in your narratives, but people might connect with different themes, right? If a person who reads this is not an immigrant, they might connect to a totally different part of the story, you know what I mean? Because of their own experience, right? So I think what I want you guys to take from today is, I don't expect you to read every narrative after today and know exactly what the theme is, but I hope what you can do is start to practice asking yourself the right questions that will help you, analyze this type of writing. I think that's my goal. Anybody else questions, ideas? We're going to practice this much more next week too, but anything else people noticed or wanted to say? We could talk about this story for a long time, but what else? Anybody else?
Okay.
Excuse me, Professor.
Yes, Amina, please.
Yes, I have a question that does a narrative should have a specific theme, or can it contain several different themes?
Probably in a story like this that's 10 pages, probably have more than one theme. When you write your first narrative assignment, it's only 2 or 3 pages. So it would be hard to have 10 themes in a short narrative. But I also don't want you to feel like, let me say this, there might be more than one theme, yes, period. That's the short answer. But for this class, for the skill I want you guys to practice, writing skill, the most important thing is that before you sit down to start writing and tell me your story, I want you to know what the theme is. I want you to know why the story is meaningful, right? That's the most important thing I want you to practice, is writing a story where you already know, okay, what I want the reader to feel is X, Y, and Z, right? Jamila knows when she writes about the salmon, she knows, I want the reader to be thinking about home. I want the reader to be thinking about family. So I'm going to tell a story that will make the reader feel that way. That's what I want you guys to practice for this. So if you only connect to one theme only, right, that's totally fine. But also when you practice reading, I mean, you will see there will be stories in a map is only one story. There will be stories with, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 kind of big themes. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know. Thank you.
Oh,
Great
thank you.
question. Yeah, what else? Who else? Ideas, questions, fears, dreams. Tell me what's going on.
And Paige, if somebody doesn't have question, I share something.
Sure, please.
Okay.
Well, does anybody else? Because I want to make sure. Yeah, that's a great point. Does anybody else have anything? Because otherwise we can let Jeremiah go. She's always got good ideas and
I'm not
questions.
Jeremiah, I'm Leila, but my son is Jeremiah.
Ah, Leila.
My son is
know.
Jeremiah.
I should know.
Sometimes he used my computer and then.
Forgive me. I think I've made that mistake twice. I'm so sorry. I will not forget, Leila. I know I did 2 weeks ago. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Anybody who is not Leila want to talk? Because otherwise we'll let Leila go.
Okay. Paragraph in page 23, paragraph 3. It was very nice. Page 23. I like this. She doesn't say I'm from this country or I'm from American, I'm from Canada. She say a lot of things. I am from a house of borrowed things. When people ask me where are you from, I can't exactly say I'm from Iran. I'm not, when I leave my country, I'm not just from Iran. I'm from Turkish, I'm from Armenian, I'm from America.
Yeah.
United States, because I have feeling I live for 4 years, 6 years in some country, and I have a lot of feeling, and I have a lot of, I spend my life there for 4 years. I have a lot of things. I lose something, I earn something, I find something, I make friend. The same I can say I'm from Iran, just I'm from Iran. And I like this. This is I think is them again. I know I want to ask this paragraph is them. I'm from a place beyond the scope of any map or road athlete.
Yeah.
This is
I'll ask the whole class to Leila. Leila says, do we think that this paragraph is about the theme? Thumbs up. What do we, is this a theme paragraph?
Where are you from?
Definitely. Ravi gave me the yes. I think you're
yes, like it's noisy a little bit in my house here. So yeah.
Yes, Veronica agrees, Rafi agrees, Fatma agrees. Yeah, I think this is 100% theme, Jeremiah, right? And Leila, I'm looking at your name. I'm so sorry, Leila.
Don't worry.
It's because I'm so used to reading the names now. I usually just look at people's faces in class, but now I just read the names. Forgive me, Leila. I think you're right. Again, this is pure theme, right? This is sort of her. She tells a story, and then at different moments in the story, she kind of reflects or thinks about what it means, right? She's like, well, what does this mean? What do I have to say about it? How do I feel? And like I said, it should feel a little bit more artistic, a little bit more poetic, a little bit more like literature, right? Instead of just beginning, middle, and end of a story, right? And in a good narrative, you understand the connection between the two things. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question.
Yes, Fatma, please.
Narrative, like writing, do we have to read between lines?
I mean, again, I think, yeah, because again, it's not like
imagination. As I start the story, my imagination goes like around.
I love it.
I start comparing myself to her.
I love it.
Experience, I know how she cut the thing, how she matched the imagination with the reality.
I do. Yeah. I think you're right. And I think it's also why this narrative, again, on the narrative slide in PowerPoint, I talk about first person pronouns, right? Saying I and we and I is very powerful. And when we say I and me, I think you're right. When I write in the first person, when people read it, they feel that personal connection. But I think you're exactly correct. They start to go, oh, wow, like, how do I feel about that? Or what does that make me think about from my life? I think you're exactly correct. I think you're exactly correct. And I think, what was the other, you had, you said something about that personal connection with, which I love and agree. And I got excited. You had one other good idea I wanted to talk about.
It was the feeling about the things, like how she described it.
Yes, yeah. So the way she described things,
and she related to something for like imagination.
Yeah.
And she make it like leave it with that.
Good, good. That's great. I agree. I agree. I agree. I agree. Yeah, fantastic. Anybody else? We've got about 10 minutes, so maybe if we have time for one or two more people. Let's see. Angela asks, is the theme in the narrative the central topic or the main idea of the story? Yes. Oh, and this, oh, that's what Fatma, you were asking. Read between the lines.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know read between the lines as an idiom, that means, do I kind of have to guess a little bit what the theme or the main idea is? And I'm going to say yes, because again, it's not a 5-paragraph essay, right? Jamila also didn't, the first sentence isn't, hey, everybody, I'm going to tell you a story about family and home and identity. This, and that would be a thesis statement, right? A thesis statement in a paper, a 5-paragraph essay would be, this paper is about blah, blah, blah. You're not doing that, right? She doesn't say, this is a story all about home. She tells a story, and you do kind of have to feel, you have to read between the lines. And if, I'll again say, if the writer has done a good job, an effective job, then the reader shouldn't have to guess too much, right? Like I said, if it's a good narrative, it's impossible, like my weird example, for someone to say, this is a story about how to get rich. No, it's not. Like, that's not even in the story. Like, you're wrong. That's not in there, right? But you do kind of have to go, okay, the salmon, like I love, Susanna asked, like Susanna's question was like, are the salmon, is she using the salmon, right? You do kind of have to be like, I think she's saying she feels like a fish, which again, when you say it by itself sounds weird, but when you read the story, hopefully, it makes sense, right? You understand the feeling, right? You understand the feeling. Yeah, I love, so read between the lines. Yes, I think you do have to read between the lines. And I think that's why this type of genre is a little bit different and difficult for students, because you guys are so used to, and you guys are such good students, you're so used to 5-paragraph essay, like where's the thesis? Wait, where's the topic sentence? Where are the support details? You know, and this is a different structure. It is a different structure. It definitely is. Yeah, Ibrahim.
I want to make sure I'm mute or not. So, Professor, yeah, because most of the time my kids are around right here. So, when you give us a permission to read between the lines, so there is nothing wrong with the themes. That's mean everybody has their own theme. So which one is probably one of these are the powerful one. One of these should be the good one, and some of them are a little like easier or something. I don't want to tell about it.
I love it. No, yeah, I didn't want to cut you off. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Anything else you wanted to say?
No, that's it. So the main question, sorry, the main question is this. Yeah. Is there any wrong team? Because when I feel something, I said, I'm feeling. Nobody can expect like that.
Yes, I think that, like I said, as long as the theme you identify makes sense, is in the story, it's not right or wrong. Like, is the theme in this story family? Yeah. Is the main theme home? Yeah. Is the main theme identity, you know, maps, places, geography? Yeah, it is. But what it's not is, like I said, how to get rich. It's not, this is not a story about religion, for example, right? It's not. Now, other stories in this book do talk about religion a lot in a certain specific way, right? But so again, your question is, again, like Rafi's great question is, yeah, everybody will have a different feeling when they read the story. And it's also, I will tell you right now, Ibrahim, is why in this class, I ask you to write your own narrative instead of analyze another narrative, because that is much more difficult, right? Like if I ask you to analyze what's the main theme here, that's tricky because there might not be one right answer, right? But if I ask you to write, which I'm going to, your own narrative, and then I do ask you to know what theme you are writing about in your own narrative, right? So that's what I was trying to say on this slide when Rafi was asking, right? Or I'm sorry, this one. You know, there is a difference between writing your own narrative and then writing an analysis of a narrative. We're kind of doing an analysis of the narrative. So for analysis, your point, Ibrahim, is exactly correct, right? Like I said, if an American who is not an immigrant reads this story, they might have a totally different experience of what the main most important theme is, right? So we all bring our experience to everything we see and read and hear. So yeah, I agree with your question. I totally agree with your question. Between the lines is an idiom. Rafi's saying, yeah, read between the lines. Read between the lines means you have to understand by implication. You have to understand. It's not just like I said, it's not the writer saying like, this is the theme. No, to understand the theme, you kind of have to read between the lines, figure it out, kind of figure it out. Yeah. Okay, so since we only have 5 minutes, I just want to do this. We spent time talking about this, which makes me so happy. No problem. So I was going to introduce the first writing project, but let's wait and to do that to next week. So if you see anything in Canvas that says stuff has a due date, don't worry about that, because here's what was going to do, but instead I'm just going to say this. So nothing's really due. I'll change the dates in Canvas. Next week, though, 100%, I'm going to introduce the first major writing assignment. But what I want you to do is start reading A Map is Only One Story. I'm going to ask you to read at least 4 of those stories, whichever ones you choose. I mean, I think, I think it's worth reading the whole book. I'll also point out, again, if you go to course materials, Professor Jeff's course materials, I have recorded myself reading, 7 or 8 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them, right? So
thank you so much. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I think, like I said, people learn in different ways. Some people love to read, some people like to listen. So whatever helps you understand. So all of that information is there. If you want to listen to me reading, if you just want to read by yourself, it's all there for you. Next week, we'll practice with a different story from this book. So hopefully, come ready to talk about one of the stories. And go ahead, Layla.
Which story? What a story?
I don't know yet. I don't know. Usually, the way I like to teach is I kind of see how I'm feeling that day. I always know what I want to teach you, but like what story and how I'm going to teach you, I kind of got to see how, here's another idiom for you, Rafi, is read the room. Read the room means you kind of, you try to understand what's happening in the present moment, and then you make your decision based on the present moment. And again, Rafi knows that I'm that type of teacher. So I don't know yet, Layla. I will tell you, I truly love. What is this weird thing? Hey, what is this weird thing? Who's this weird? Hi. Who's this blonde? Who's this blonde talking on the TV? I really like Arab Past and American Present. I think that's a really good one. And it's not as sad as this one. I also think Should I Apply for Citizenship is really, really interesting. So again, I don't know, probably one of those two, because I like those. I mean, usually I just analyze the one I like the most. So that would be my suggestion. And like I said, in Canvas, where it talks about the due dates and stuff, please don't worry about that. I will change that right now. But again, next week, no matter what, I'm going to introduce the first writing project and give you the due dates and stuff for all that. But for this week, if you're watching the recording and you're not here with us, we got almost everybody here, but catch up, do any of the lessons you haven't done, because we're moving on, and then read A Map is Only One Country. Okay, so that's what I'll add that actually here just so that it's clear. Coming up.
You mean that we don't need to start writing the assignment?
Yeah, no, because I haven't assigned it. I don't want you to even worry about looking at it until I've showed it to you and explained to you what I want and how to do it. And so don't worry about writing. That'll be next week will be all about that. We'll analyze another example for structure. And I'll give at least 30 minutes at the end to introduce the essay, answer questions, make sure you understand what I am asking you to do, okay?
Are you going to give us like an example how you like us to write it, or you will?
Such a good question. I don't know yet.
I like example. When I don't know the teacher, I like example because each teacher likes like different type of things.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
For us, and we catch up more.
Let me think about it. I mean, the defensive part of me says the examples are from a map is only one story, but I know you mean student examples. I know. Let me think about it. I know.
Same subject. No
I
matter
don't. My heart, the way I always feel about this is I think it's helpful to show you an example, but then what happens is everyone tries to be like that one example, but really, as you will see when you read this book, is there are a lot of different ways to do this type of writing. So Fatma, I take your question very seriously, and Nadia, I saw you nodding too. Let me think about it is my answer. Let me think about it. Okay, so catch up if you're not done with especially the lessons for chapter 1 for white translation. If you're not done with that, and like I said, I think only 7 or 8 people have finished them, so finish the lessons if you can and just read and enjoy the book. I love this book. I hope you love it too, so I hope you enjoy it when you read. And text me, email me if you have any questions or need anything, please. You know where to find me. Otherwise, I'm going to turn the recording off right now, and if you have any specific questions, I'll be here for another few minutes. I've got office hours if people want to hang out with me, but I'm going to stop recording now. And if you're leaving, goodbye. You're wonderful. I'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye, teacher.